professional speaker, consultant, entrepreneur from the Chippeways of Rama First Nation. I first met Ted about 5 years ago at an NHL alumni event, and when I knew kind of the theme that we were going with this year, he was on my list for sure to try to get in here to have him speak to you people today, because I think you're going to get a lot out of his stories and his journey. So Ted will share his journey to becoming the youngest elected chief in community history, and how he used the grandfather's teachings, the 4 directions, and the 4 medicines to build his legacy. Ted will challenge us to do more, be more, and give more while building a winning team and a legacy of our own. Please welcome Ted Williams.
Aneen. Aneen. Aneen is hello in Ojibwe. My name is Ted Williams. Indijnakas Ramaminjikaning Donjaba Gigo Dodem. So I introduce you in my Anishinaabe way. I'm from Ramaminjikaning, which is a place where people gather up by Orillia. And I'm a member of the Fish Clan. Fish Clan are the educators. I wanted to be a teacher when I was growing up. I thought, yeah, that would be great to be a teacher, but as you all find out, didn't quite make it in the contemporary sense. My background is I grew up in the Native community in Rama, and a 900 square foot home. I was one of 14 kids. We didn't have running water. Had to go about 50 yards out back to refresh ourselves, and it was a tough life, but it was the only life that I knew. Having said that, I went on to, and I have gone on to do some pretty amazing things. I'm going to share that with you. So I'm here to talk about honoring our heritage, and we have a very similar, here we go, heritage. Mississaugas. I'd like to acknowledge that Mississauga is related to us. I'm Anishinaabe. Anishinaabe means first people, and they are in the southern land of what is now known as Ontario. And Mississauga is how you pronounce that. And those are the people at the Great River mouth, the peoples of the Mississauga. And I'm really pleased to hear the acknowledgement. How I live my life is akin to, you've heard of the 10 Commandments. The 7 grandfather teachings of wisdom, love, respect, bravery, honesty, humility, and truth. And that's how I have come to know how to actually live my life, and I share that with my kids and my community. I also want to just touch on, just briefly, on the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, the work that was done regarding the residential school issue that the Commission had spent a considerable amount of time. And the fact that I'm actually here speaking to you all touches on Act, number 57 regarding the calls to action. There's 94 calls to action. And I'm just leaving that up there. And if you have a chance to watch the movie Indian Horse, or if you have, I encourage you to do that to learn a little bit more about some of the issues that are going on with First Nations people today. Diversity. I'm all about diversity. We've got the diversity symbol. I wear it here. The diversity symbol symbolizes the 4 directions of the world, of Mother Earth. You've got the east, which is the yellow. You've got the south, which is the red. You've got the black, which is the west, and you've got the white, which is the north, which also represents the four races of mankind. And there's various medicines associated to the diversity circle. I could get into that, but you'd need another couple of days. If you Google Ted Williams, that's who you're going to see. He's not as handsome as me, but if you Google Ted Williams, that's who you're going to see. Now, when I was born in 1956, June 20th, I came home the day after. I was the eighth child of my mom, who had, and I honor my mother, up until 1965, she was 33, and she had 14 kids. So I honor my mother. So I come home, and my neighbor comes, and George Sawyer was his name, and he was a big fan of the Boston Red Sox. He would listen to the ball games on the big stand-up radio. And so he comes home, and he comes over to my mom and dad's house, and I'm there, a little baby, and my mom, he asked my mom, "What's the name of the boy?" And she says, "Edward Anthony Williams." And she says, "No, it's not." He says, "No, it's not. It's Ted Williams," after the great baseball player Ted Williams. And so after the next 8 to 10 years, I'm like, people are saying Ted Williams, they call me Ted Williams, baseball player and all. I don't know who he is. I have no idea. I do like to play softball. I'm a big softball player. One day I go to the library, and I look up Ted Williams. There's this book, Ted Williams' autobiography, 1956. So I read about him. I'm like, wow, this guy was the greatest hitter of all time, arguably. Hit for power, hit the runs batted in, hit for average, rarely struck out. And I'm like, wow, this guy was quite the ball player. Fast forward, I'm just going to grab a little drink here, I'm a little dry. I'm a storyteller. So there I am. I'm 10. I know who Ted Williams is. And in my little house, 900 square feet, come out the driveway. The road is here. Over here is a big stand of willow trees. Then there's a field over there, and the house is there. And what happens is, I decided I'm going to play baseball. I played this imaginary game. Stones about the size of your thumbnail, hitting with a stick about the size of 2 fingers. I throw them up, throw them up, throw them up, and I imagine I am Ted Williams. And I'm throwing them up, and I can make that stone zing. I could send it up high. I could hit it to the right. I could hit it to the left. Little stone. Got to the point where there was no stones in front of the house because I hit them all into the field. The great green willow trees. If you've ever been to Boston or you've seen it on TV, it's called the Green Monster, that big wall. And that's where I would hit the stones into the green wall. Now, Ted Williams hit from the other side, so he didn't hit over to the green wall, but I was creating my own little game. So I did this for 3 or 4 years. I was obsessed with doing this. And what happened was, in our softball game, when the softball is coming at you at 60 miles an hour, the ball is that big, and you're hitting it with a bat like that. Well, that was a piece of cake for me, because my hand-eye coordination was as such that I could just pick it right out. And I could hit it there, I could hit it there, or I could bomb it. And so, on our team, I was the cleanup hitter like Ted Williams. I had the home runs. I had the RBIs. I rarely struck out. I hit for a high average. And so in my mind, I became Ted Williams. My question, who do you want to become? Who do you want to become? Are you there? Are you working at something? This is the home of my ancestors. This is the council hall. These are my ancestors from 1935 or so, about 80 years ago. And I love how they're all dressed, my ancestors. I went into the hall one day when I was about 12, 13, with my dad, and he said hello to some of the people in the hall. They were sitting around the table, and I said, "Who are those guys?" He says, "That's your chief, and that's your council." And what do? He says, "They direct the community. They provide leadership for the community and move us forward." And I thought to myself, one day I'd like to become chief. Now, all of those individuals they're all 50 plus. And so I would repeat to myself over the course of time, one day I would like to become chief. One day I'd like to become chief. I never spoke this out loud to anybody. I would say it within the confines of my own thoughts. One day I'd like to become chief. One day I would like to become chief. No, that's not the chief. As a youth, you run into issues. You run into making some life choices that aren't necessarily good. This is the Ted Williams, the bad Ted Williams. I don't mind telling you that I lived up to the stereotypical belief of drunken Indian. I lived up to it. I drank feverishly for about 12, 13 years. I was a bit of a rebel. I like to tell people that grade 9 was the best 3 years of my life. And that's the truth. And my high school teacher, my homeroom teacher in grade 9 was the same teacher. Each of those 3 years. You know what, today? I have lunch with him every other month. Lunch with him. It's amazing. So I hit this rebel stage, and I'm still playing baseball. I'm playing championship baseball with my colleagues and my fellow baseball teammates in Rama. I eventually grow out of this. I quit drinking in 1982, January 18th, 1982. I am 37 years plus sober. Thank you very much. I have 2 wonderful kids, Julie and Ryan. Ryan is out in Palm Springs. I was out there to visit him 6 weeks ago and went and did some golfing and helped him with his house. And Julie, she works for the Assembly of First Nations in Ottawa. And Julie and Ryan both have their own paths, encouraged by mom and dad. But Julie, believe it or not, get this. Julie went and she made it to Oxford. I don't have grade 12. I went to college. I quit because I was going to get kicked out. So it's a real badge of honor that my daughter made it to Oxford. I tell people that she got her brains from her mom and her good looks from her dad. So as I was repeating, I want to be chief, I want to be chief, thinking that I need to be on council before, I was elected to council in 1982. I was 25. Well, yeah, 25. And I had quit drinking the night I was elected. I quit because my wife, I had said to her before, she said, "You got to quit drinking, you got to quit drinking." And I said, "No, I don't." And then finally, I said to her, "Our kids will never see what I saw growing up." And I love my mom and I love my dad, but some of the things that I saw was not good. Anyway, the night I was elected, I don't even remember, I passed out. Woke up the next morning, she's crying, she's got the baby, Ryan, he was 7 weeks old. I said, "What's wrong?" "You broke your promise to me." I'm like, "What promise was that?" She said that you said that our kids would never see what you saw growing up. Your son, 7 years old, saw you acting like a fool, talking like a fool. And she says, "And you broke your promise to me." And I said, "You're right." And I quit. I quit right then and there. Haven't had a drink since that time. And so I thank the Creator for my lovely wife. And I would not be the man that I am today if it had not been for her. As I was working on council, the elders in the community said, we think that you would be a good chief. This is 1985, late fall 1985, elections in January 1986. And I said, "Well, if you get the family behind me, your family's behind me, I will." And I said, "We will." And they did. And so they elected me chief in January 18th, 1986. I was 29, the youngest chief that we've ever had. And take you back to when I was 12 or 13. I would say to myself, one day I'd like to become chief, one day I'd like to become chief, one day I'd like to become chief. And it materialized. Wow. I didn't realize what I had done at the time. I did not. Only after. But I held the chief chair for just one term, and then I started selling real estate. And when I sold real estate, I came across something that would help me in the future. I became a good salesperson. I learned how to sell real estate, which would help me in the future. I want to stop right there, and I want to talk to you about this is one of my favorite stories. This picture here of me is me, and we're at the Davos arena where they play the Spengler Cup, and this is 2001, March 2001. And it reminds me of when I used to play hockey, to some critical acclaim, Mr. Trottier, wherever you are. And I used to play in the Industrial League, and I said to my wife one night, "Tonight, honey, I play like Paul Coffey. I skate like Paul Coffey. I shoot like Paul Coffey. I make moves like Paul Coffey. Tonight, I play like Paul Coffey." This is over our spaghetti dinner. And she goes, "Oh, that's nice." So we go out. Young fella, Sean, he says to me, "Teddy, we're playing the first place team. We're up against it. And I don't know, it's going to be a tough game." And I'm like, he's like really down. And I'm like, "Hey," I said, "I want you to let them know that they're in a hockey game tonight. We're last place. They're first place." I said, "Well, let them know they're in for a hockey game tonight." Well, we win 6-4. I scored 2 goals and 2 assists. I should say that Sean, He's just a young fella. Was a cute little guy. And so at the end of the game, he sits beside me in the stall there. He says, "Teddy, I can't believe it." He says, "We beat the top team." And he says, "You played awesome out there." And he said to me, "You look like Paul Coffey." You skated like him. You shot like him. You had moves like him. And I'm like, do. And I'm like, "Thanks, Sean." I go home, the adrenaline is pumping still. My wife, she's in bed. And I climb into bed and she says, "How'd you do?" I said, "We won." "Oh, you won?" "Yes." "How'd you play?" I said, "I played good. I scored 2 goals and 2 assists." "Oh, you had a good game." I said, "But that's not the most exciting part." She says, "What?" I said, "Remember Sean?" Yeah, cute little boy, Sean." You know what Sean said to me? What did he say? He said, "I played like Paul Coffey, I shot like Paul Coffey, I skated like Paul Coffey, I had moves like Paul Coffey." And my wife said, "What?" And I said, "Yes. Yes." He didn't say that. He said the exact words. The exact words. And I'm like, wow, that was amazing. So Paul Coffey, wherever you are, thank you very much. This is Ted Williams, the chainsaw carver. I've made about 4,000 of these guys, different sizes, since 2004. I never had a chainsaw in my hand before in my life, and had a friend who actually was doing this, and I bought some off of him, and I asked him, "Show me how to do that." So he showed me how to do it. He said, "Come and spend a couple of days with me, and I'll show you." He said, "I'm not a teacher. I'll make a cut, and you make the same cut." Well, 2 hours in, he gets upset. And he says, "Grab your bear." So I grab it. I follow him to his house. He goes inside. He's got two bears, puts them down. He says, "Put yours in the middle." So I put mine in the middle, and I know what he's thinking now. He says, "This guy's been carving for 3 years. He gave me his first bear. This guy's been carving for 2 years. He gave me his first bear. You've been carving for 2 hours. The lesson's over." And I'm like, "Well, there's so much to learn." You'll figure it out. I did figure it out. And 4,000 carvings later, Muskoka Pro Chainsaw Carving, I don't do as much of it as I used to do, but if you can Google that or you can Facebook that, you'll see I just do bears. You know, kind of goes along with that whole teddy bear theme I've been living. But I love it. And members of the community would come up to me, and I was selling them. I used to sell them outside the casino. The Rama General Store. Who's been to the casino, by the way? Hands up. Oh, maybe I sold a bear to you. Anyway, I had done about 14 or 15 of them, and they were on the deck at home. And my wife, she says, we can't keep these. Get rid of them, sell them, or give them away, something. I said, "I'm not giving them away." So I put them in a trailer, went to the Rama General Store, and I came back home at about 5 o'clock, and the trailer is empty. And my wife, she says, "Who did you give them to?" I said, "I didn't give them to anybody." "Well, where are they? What did you do with them?" I said, "I sold them." "You sold them? Where's the money?" So I reached in my pocket, had a big wad of cash, put it on the kitchen table, and I said, "It's right there." She says, "How much is there?" I said, $4,300. Wow. And she said those prophetic words, "You better keep carving then, I guess." So I kept carving, but I loved it. I loved it. I still love it. Oh, one of the other things that I do, and this is my motto today as I live my life, I'm not going to do anything if it's not going to allow me to golf. So if you ask me to do something, but it doesn't allow me to golf, then I'm not going to do it. 2000 after I had left my ball team and my hockey team in 1982 because everybody was throwing beer at me, wanting me to drink. And I couldn't do it any longer. So I got to get out of this scenario. So I took up golfing in 1984. First time I ever golfed. I was 28. Anyway, I worked on my game. I just loved to play. I was a 15 to 20 handicapper, and I was 15, 20 handicapper until 1996. Then my assistant, when I was developing the casino, we went to a game, golf game, and she played in a par 3. She shot 35. I shot 37. And she's like, woohoo! I beat the boss. And I'm like, I can't deal with that. I went to practice. I never ever practiced in my life. But hitting a golf ball with a stick, hitting stones with a stick, practice and repetition, to be able to turn it to the right, turn it to the left, hit it high, streamer straight, make it stop, make it pull back. At the end of practice, I became pretty good. I won the club championship in Aurelia 9 years in a row, from 1999 until 2008. 2006, I decide I have a bucket list now in my golfing career. I wanted to go and play against the best. I turned 50 in 2006. I went to the Champions Tour Q School, qualifying school. It cost me $4,500 to go there, and I teed it up with the best professionals of 50 years of age and plus, and I was an amateur. And the difference between them and me, even though I didn't make it, I was starstruck. The difference between them and me was this much. I know that because they didn't beat me by much, but they were good enough because they play 10 to 11 months a year. I play 5, maybe 6. But I was there. I got my scorecard, I got my Champions Tour PGA stuff, it's all there, and I'm like, yeah, I did it. I did it. And I went on to play professional tournaments, several of them, and I won 4 of them. And but it was a good pastime. I don't play professionally anymore. I just play competitively on the amateur circuit. But I played. Ooh, we already know who's been there. Casino Rama. 1993, I was the administrator in Rama. I was basically the guy who ran the show in the First Nation. And so we were pursuing a casino. And I had 40 different community meetings in my own community, plus 20 to 30 in the surrounding community, municipality, city of Aurelia, and I gave the presentation on the casino and what it would mean. Eventually, December 5th, 1994, Chippewas of Rama won the bid to be the first, to be the host of the first commercial casino in a Native community. And I wrote the proposal, I worked the bid, and we decided to build this casino. Now, I was the manager of the community. 1995, my chief and council said, we need somebody to implement this. And they looked at me and I said, you got to do it because you've been working it. And I'm like, but I'm working here. I'm the manager. He said, we want you to leave here and do this. So I had to assemble a team. I had to assemble a team of individuals who are a lot smarter than me, but who like to have fun and enjoyed a challenge. And so I hired 10 people. They worked for me, coordinated it, I motivated them. We overlooked and oversaw numerous plans. Anyway, long story short, we opened the casino in July 31st, 1996. After some challenging issues, let's say. It took us about 19 months to open up Casino-Rama. And so I said to my leadership, well, it's done. It's going to open up. And so I went and asked for a raise. And they gave me what amounts to the 4%. And I'm like, I set the table here. Folks, a little bit more. And we were very conservative at the time, and they said, no, we couldn't do it. So the operator was Carnival Hotels and Casinos, and I asked the chief and the council, do you mind if I ask them if they could use a guy like me? Well, if it works out, works out. So I asked the president, and he's starting to negotiate with me. And I said, whoa, if you can tell me someone who's brought more to this project than me, then I will negotiate with you. Who is it? He says, who's negotiating? What do you want? And so I asked for what I wanted. I got what I asked for. And I was there for 5 years as vice president of corporate affairs and HR. HR! This grade 9 dropout. HR! Wow. And we have, over the course of the casino, in 23 years, let's say $450 million a year, do the math, $10 billion run through the casino and distributed in various forms. The arena that you see in Rama, and there's a senior, I negotiate that whole thing because of what I learned in this real estate sales game, learning how to sell. And one of my objectives was to become a successful business person. This was opening night when I didn't have gray hair, and it was just a fabulous run for me at that time. But I only stayed for 5 years because I'm like, I'm not a casino guy. I got other things I got to do. I have other goals that I need to achieve. So I stayed for 5 years, and then I moved on. I became an entrepreneur, doing speaking, a lot of speaking, and consulting for First Nations and organizations, doing business with First Nations and individuals. And then my little side gig of carving. And so I did that for 14 years. So I ran my own businesses for 14 years. One of my favorite stories. This is just amazing. I told you I sold real estate. In 1989, and when I was selling real estate, now, I didn't sell anything for about 7 months. So my family and friends were kind of keeping me going because I had bills to pay. Little kids. Julie was 5 and Ryan was 8. And I didn't know what I was doing, but I took a course. I don't know if you people know of a fellow by the name of Brian Tracy. Anybody? Nobody? Oh, that's not good. Brian Tracy is a Canadian. He lives in San Diego, and he became a mentor of mine. And he's a motivational speaker, author, business person. Anyway, I took his program, and some of the things that I took in the program I began to implement, and one of them was the parking story. Parking story goes like this. I lived in Ramette in a nice little wee 850 square foot home with my wife in the house that we had when, I quit drinking. And we had about 35 agents in the office, and they all parked in the municipal parking lot about 2 blocks down. In Orillia on Front Street and Mississauga, where the office is, there's a subway there now, but as you are looking at Mississauga Street, there's 2 parking spots here and there's 2 there. And before I went to work, to the office, I would say to myself, there'll be a parking spot, there'll be a parking spot there. There'll be a parking spot there for me. Yeah, parking spot. I pulled in, and for 3 or 4 months, I had either one of these 2 or one of these 2. I go into the office one day, and my boss says, Teddy, he's 6'8", big man, sit down. I said, yeah, Chris, what's up? He says, your colleagues have asked me to talk to you. About what? About how do you get the parking spot? What's the deal? What's the deal? What you got going with the stores? And I'm like, I don't have a deal with the stores. Come on, Teddy. You're there every day. You got to have some kind of deal. And I said, no, I don't. And he said, well, how do you explain? I said, well, I can tell you. I said, you're not going to believe me. That's what I can tell you. He says, try me out. So I told him, I said, Chris, every time when I come into work, an hour to half an hour before I come in, I visualize and I affirm and I believe and I have faith that one of those parking spots will be there for me. And different times, Chris, I've turned to the left to go onto Mississauga Street and there's no parking spot. Funny thing happens, crazy thing happens, somebody comes out of the store, jumps in their car, takes off, I just pull in, like they were waiting for me to show up. He looks at me like, you native guys are so spiritual. He says, is that the truth? He says, I find that hard to believe. I said to him, Chris, quite frankly, I don't care if you believe me. I will be here tomorrow in one of those parking spots, implementing what I know. I will be there, so I don't care if you believe me or not. He says, will you tell that story at our next sales meeting? I said, yes, I will. He says, they're going to laugh at you. They're going to cajole you. They're going to be asking, what are you smoking? He said, well, will you tell that story? I said, yes. So I told the story the following Monday at the sales meeting. And Chris gets up, slams his big fist on the table, and he says, all right, you had your fun. He says, if you want to know what's going on with Teddy Williams and how he's able to get the parking spot, because you guys were all complaining, I talked to the stores. The store owner said, we don't know what's going on. We don't have a deal with him. We're concerned too because he's always got one of the parking spots in front of our stores. He says he doesn't have a deal with him. He's told you what he's doing. And I would suggest that if you want to know what's going on with Teddy Williams and how he's doing what he's doing, you talk to him now. Because right now, in real estate, he's outselling each and every one of you. One person came to talk to me. I shared with her over the course of a few days what I do. 5 months later, the sales meeting, she's salesperson of the month. She gets up, she says, Teddy told a story. I asked him. He told me. I'm implementing, and that's why I'm here today. That's my parking story. But it only works if you believe it and you have faith in it. And you talk to yourself convincingly. And it's amazing what happens. It's like the heavens open up for you. But it's right here. It's right here. I got here early, so I got a good parking spot. There was nobody else around. We bought a house with no money. I didn't have a pot to you-know-what in. Because when I was selling real estate, I was being kept afloat by family and friends, as I mentioned. And my wife is non-native. We were having issues with our kids on the bus, and we had to do something. And she said, well, I'd like to buy a house in Aurelia. And I'm like, okay. So I'm selling real estate, so we look at this house. It was under construction. And she knew that subdivision. She knew all the models, and it was under construction. And she said, oh, I'd love to buy that house. But we don't have any money. We can't buy that house. She says, what am I talking about? And I said, why don't we put an offer in? What? She says. She said, we don't have any money. I said, doesn't matter. No. I know we don't have any money. I checked the bank account. We don't have any money. I said, well, let's put an offer in, conditional on financing. And she said, how are you going to do that? I said, well, we'll sell our little house in Rama. Now, in Rama, the Indian Reserve, only people in Rama can buy the house. So it's a very limited market. Anyway, went to the chief and council to see if they wanted to buy it. They said no. Put the notice out in the community, no. And so we were approaching the removal of the conditions, and I went to a friend who said, I would like to invest in some commercial property, duplex, triplex, fourplex. And so what happened was, he comes in, and or I go to see him, and he says, I explained to him what I'm doing. He said, that's your own house. That's not what I meant. Why are you asking me? I said, well, if I don't ask, I know the answer is 100% no. But if I ask, it's immediately 50-50. How are you going to pay me back? I said, I'll rent the house or I'll sell it, and I'll give you the rent. It's $45,000. He looks at me. I don't normally do this, so I'm going to give you the money. He wrote me a check 2 weeks before the 29th of September. We closed the deal. We moved in the house on the 29th of September. I still have my little house. We still have our little house in Rama. Nobody's there. We moved into the house on Friday, the 29th of September. Looked that date up, 1989. And my wife, she was just crying. She said, I can't believe I'm here. I can't believe it. Anyway, I go back out to Rama on Monday, 2nd of October, cleaning it up, getting it ready. Guy comes up to the door. He's a police officer. His wife works in education in our community. He says, I want to buy a house. I want to buy your house. I hear it's for sale. I want it for my mom. She's renting in town. You can't get a mortgage in Rama. You have to go and get a personal loan. I said, go and talk to this lady for a personal loan, and she'll let you know if you qualify for it. Well, he goes in, talks to her. 2 hours later, he's back. He says, guess what? I got the money. I'm like, try not to get too excited. He said, the only thing I need is, what do they call that? Agreement of purchase and sale. He said, do you know what that is? Well, I'm selling real estate. That's what I do. So I write it up. Now, you don't have to go to the registry office and take 30 to 60 to 90 days in the reserve. It's like pay your garbage bill and you're in. So I get to the closing date. So when do you want to close the deal? He says to me, what's that mean? When do you want to give me the check and I give you the key? And he's like, who's in here now? I said, nobody. He says to me, how about tomorrow? Tomorrow? I'm really trying hard to contain myself. And I was like, that works for me, you know. And I'm like, whoo. Anyway, he said, but I want that little TV and I want that antenna. Well, we bought a new TV and we got cable in Aurelia. I said, you drive a hard bargain? I said, but you can have them. And we moved. I got the check off him. The next day, I went to visit my friend who gave me the money. And he thinks, I got it in a nice little card. He thinks it's a thank you card. I said, there you go. Thank you very much. His name was Floor. Oh, you didn't have to do that. Yeah, you know, you didn't have to do that, Teddy. You know, I said, no, this is for you. I really appreciate it. He didn't have to do that. And he was going to tuck it away, like, because he'll open it up later as a thank you card. I said, no, I want you to open it now. He opens it up. It's a cashier's check for $45,000. He looks at me like, 3 weeks ago, you told me your own words was you didn't have a pot to you know what in. Now you're in a $180,000 house. How did you do that? How did you do that? It's what I talked to you about before. You visualize it. You have faith in it. You believe it. People, places, circumstances, and situations will roll themselves out to you. You got to listen to the little voice within, because the little voice within, your super subconscious, knows what is right, knows what is wrong. I listened to it. I made the right request at the right time. I acted on it, and we were in the house. Jump, and the net will catch you. I'm sure you've heard that before. And I jumped, we jumped, and we got caught. It was awesome. So my challenge to you is, what can you, because I would do this to myself all the time as I'm working in my community, what can I, and only I do, if done well, will make a difference? What can I, and only I do, if done well, will make a difference? And that's basically how I've lived my life. I didn't know it at the time, but I wanted to work for my people. I wanted to enhance our life, and it's come to fruition. We are one of the top 5 to 7 First Nation communities in all of Canada, Chippewas of Rama, and I'm so proud of that, and what I have been able to contribute to the cause. So I'm asking you, and ask your colleagues at the office, the people that report to you, just leave it with them. Because only they know. Don't ask them to tell you. Only they know. Just like only I knew what I was capable of doing because of what I had taken in. So ask. I want to share one more story. I love telling my stories. My wife said to me before I came, she says, oh, you're going to have a good time. She says, you got a new audience. When I was at the casino, and I guess it's getting back to the diversity part, I was an executive vice president, and we had a lunchroom, cafeteria for staff. The executives, they had their own little lunchroom. I didn't go there. I went to the staff, dressed up in my little suit, and I walked in one day, and I see 2 people, 2 women, sitting there by themselves. All the other tables were full and crammed, but there was 2 people, 2 women from the east sitting there. And I'm like, that's not right. I grab my tray and I go and sit down with the two women. And I asked them, how are you? Where are you from? How did you get here? Do you have a family? Do you live in Aurelia? And so they told me their life story, and they called me Ted. I almost sound like dead. But Mr. Ted. Mr. Ted, Mr. Ted, Mr. Ted, when I first sat down, Mr. Ted, what are you doing? I said, I'm going to sit down and I want to get to know you. Because Ramah is a place of gathering. The prophecy was that all nations would gather in Minjickening in Ramah. And as a result of the casino, all nations came and gathered to work at Ramah. So I got to know the ladies. When I left in 2001, July 2001, they had a nice little gathering for me, and everyone would come and wish me well. Wish me well. Good luck in your next adventure, Teddy. Thank you very much. It's good to know you. We'll see you around. Those two little ladies came to see me. They had their kids. The kids were 4, 6, cute little kids. And I said, this is Mr. Ted. This is Mr. Ted. Hi, Mr. Ted. Hi, Mr. Ted. Hi, Mr. Ted. And I was touched. And so, fast forward to several years ago, actually it's about 4 years ago, I'm in leadership role, and I'm in Aurelia doing business, and I see two little ladies, the same two ladies that I'd befriended 16, 17 years before. They were approaching me, and they had some big grown-ups with them. And they said, Mr. Ted! Mr. Ted! And I'm like, yeah, how are you? How are you? Good, good, how are you? I said, I'm good, thank you. And I'm like, who are these young folks? And she explained who they were. I remembered them when they were little. I said, what are they doing? He's in university at Ryerson. She's going to Queens. And I'm like, I was so happy for them, just like I am today, for what they had accomplished, what they had persevered, because I don't know what exactly, but I know it was lots. And they've gone on to make a contribution to this great country from humble beginnings. And it kind of reminds me of me. I just want to help. I just want to help people. And so that's been my mission. Relationships is what it's all about. Building relationships, healthy relationships. I tell my daughter, I said, I want you to become socially intelligent. Socially intelligent. The ability to get along with anyone, anywhere, at any time, on any subject. And she has. Same with my son. And I'm very, very proud of them. Same with my wife. And so I've done a lot of very, very interesting things. And I'm 63 in about 2 months, and I've got a long way to go before I'm done. Long way. I started writing a book, and someone said to me, you gotta put this pen to paper. You gotta start writing a book, Teddy. So I started writing, as long as golf doesn't get in the way. So in 1894, an English teacher noted on a teenager's report card, a conspicuous lack of success in the student was Winston Churchill. In 1902, the poetry editor of the Atlantic Monthly returned a stack of poems with this note: "Our magazine has no room for your vigorous verse." Poet was Robert Frost. 1905, the University of Bern turned down a doctoral dissertation as irrelevant and fanciful, and the writer of that paper was Albert Einstein. In 1972, a young native boy, I was 16, I was told I wouldn't amount to much. I'd become a drunken Indian. I wouldn't do a whole lot except fulfill that prophecy that was out there for me. But you've heard what I've done and what I've been able to accomplish in the course of my life, and it's not over. And I say this to all of you, and I say it especially to the young people, and I run across a lot of younger people. I could have just packed it in and lived my life that I was supposedly destined for, but I didn't. And I thank my wife for that. So never, never, ever give up. Big watch.
Some questions?